In this video, I want to solve one of the biggest mystery that I have been fighting in the past 3 weeks, and that is an error, no module named wagtail homepage. I got this error whenever I tried to turn on the website using unicorn command, and I think I figured out where I did the mistake. This is really embarrassing mistake that I was not aware for 3-4 weeks. The error can be attributed to my oversight simply because I was not coding but copy-pasting the code when I was following wagtail tutorial. And to be honest, it took me a while to really notice that there's something missing in my Django settings. So without further ado, let's look into what went wrong during the integration of wagtail into my Django installation. So I have settings.py opened in Visual Studio Code, and here you see list of installed applications. The list itself is just an array of applications separated by comma. And what happened is that when I copy-pasted wagtail applications from the tutorial and pasted it into the installed app list, I forgot to add a trailing comma behind a homepage application that I add myself in the beginning of this journey. So therefore Django threw an error that it tried to basically join those two applications, homepage and wagtail, and join it as a single string. And because there's no such application named homepage wagtail, I got the error no module found. So this is pretty confusing that without a trailing comma, Django joins both strings into a single word. So this is the source of all the troubles and errors, and since I add a trailing comma behind the homepage application, there should not be any error during the migration of the wagtail database objects, and we will see if it works right now. So I am already in my Django virtual environment, and first, before migration of new database objects, I will try to turn on the unicorn web server and look if my website without any wagtail objects will work. So let's use command unicorn 10x.dahsboard. Now if I go into my browser and refresh the localhost page, you see my homepage is working. This is the homepage that we have created in one of the previous episodes, and it works even without any wagtail database objects. So I think we are ready to migrate all the wagtail objects. So I will turn off the unicorn web server. For migration of wagtail database objects, I will use command python manage.py migrate, and I get an error. The static file dirs setting is not a tuple or list. Perhaps you forgot a trailing comma. Of course, static file dirs is just another list or array of path that leads to static files in my Django project. And of course, I again forgot to add a trailing slash behind the path. So this is why it failed to check, because obviously whenever you add a parameter into a Django settings that use list or arrays, you have to always add a trailing comma. So let's add a comma behind homepage static homepage path, save it, and now let's try it again. Wow, look at all these tables that were created after installing wagtail. User profiles, add variables, documents, pages, workflow. It installed a lot of database objects. I don't want to count them all, but I think we are talking about maybe 70 or 80 database objects that were created by wagtail. Alright, let me just quickly check if those database objects were truly created by using dbeaver, a database browser. Really the best one out in the market and free also. And when I open my public schema, I don't see any tables at all. And I think migration is not enough, and I have to actually apply those newly created migration files. Because migration files, those are basically just text files with basically series of SQL commands that have to be executed in the right order if you want to create those database objects. So before going further, I think I should look at those files if they exist at all. So I'm inside my Django project folder, and here I don't see any migration files, unfortunately. But I see that there's a SQLite 3 file that were just updated today, a few minutes ago. So is it possible that all these migrations were applied into SQLite database instead of Postgres database that I integrated in the previous episodes? It's actually quite possible, but first let's check the settings. And in the database settings which we added in the previous episode, there's no mention of SQLite 3 database. My settings for SQLite database is commented out. Oh, I see. I forgot to delete this part of the code that is created by default with every new Django installation. So I think what I need to do is just to delete these settings for SQLite database. The settings that I defined in my config file is applied instead of the original settings in settings.py. So now if I call migrate.py again, it should actually apply those changes to my Postgres database that I have defined in config.py file. Let's try Python manage.py migrate again, and we can see that it again created all the objects, but hopefully this time to a correct database. I'm back in the Beaver database browser, and here if I refresh the view, I see all those tables that were migrated. You see out group, out user, which are default user management tables that comes with Django, and similarly Django session, Django migration, those are all default Django database tables. And below that we have all the wagtail database tables that comes with wagtail, and we have the wagtail core, wagtail forms, images, search. There's a lot of tables that serve a specific purpose. Okay, I think that now it's time to move on and continue with the wagtail tutorial. But before moving on, let me quickly again start the Unicorn web server and check if anything changed since we have migrated all the database objects. So I started the Unicorn web server. Now if I refresh my website, I still get my homepage, so everything is fine. My homepage is working. And now let's look at the wagtail tutorial. According to the wagtail tutorial, I should create a super user. It is a user that has admin rights and has access to both Django admin backend and also wagtail admin dashboard. So let's create the super user, and I will use command python manage.py create super user. Here I will define a default username for my admin account. Since this is just local development environment, I will name it as admin. As for email address, I will use my personal email address. As for the password, I will keep it very simple. Cool, so super user was created. And now if I want to try this super user account and log into my Django admin backend, then I will go into my domain URL with the /admin at the end, like so. And here, if I enter my login information and click login, you see that I successfully log into my Django dashboard. One weird thing is that I don't see any CSS styles. My Django admin is totally unstyled without any colors or structures. So let me quickly check if there's something I can do, like generating the static files for Django admin backend. I suspect that it might be because I don't have any static files generated. If I look into my Django project folder, you can see that there's no static file in any of the application folders, and we already defined that all static files will be held inside a static folder that should be inside the top Django folder, as we see here in static root settings. And to generate all static files, fortunately Django has a really simple command. It's called Python manage.py collect static, and I am using parameter no input because it generates a lot of text that is not important. So let's execute this command and generate all static files. Alright, right off the bat I get an error, no such file or directory, and it complains that there's no static folder inside my homepage application. So let's quickly fix that by creating a new static folder and try to collect static files again. Nope, didn't work. Oh, of course, I forgot that Django have a very specific way to, access all the folders. It's not enough that I created a static folder. I have to also create another homepage folder, and it has to also share the same name as its parent application, because obviously Django will look into all static files folders, and to assign this static folder to its parent application, apparently it needs a subfolder with the same name. So now if I again run a collect static command, hopefully it won't throw any error. So it worked this time, and 274 static files were copied into 10x static folder. And if we go into our Django project folder, we see that there's a new folder static that was just recently created, and inside the static there's many subfolders that were created by admin and wagtail applications. And inside admin folder we see a complete set of CSS files, fonts, images, and even JavaScript files. And now if I go into my Django dashboard and click refresh, tada! Now you see how Django admin dashboard should look like if everything was correct and it had all CSS styles in place. And since we haven't done any customizations to Django admin page, we just see the basic list of Django models that were created after the migration. We see the basic authentication and authorization database models that will help us to manage users and their groups. We also see a tagit, which apparently comes from wagtail installation, and it will probably hold all the tags that we will create inside pages. And there's something also called wagtail documents and wagtail images. It's interesting that we don't see any wagtail pages. I would assume that instead of documents there will be something like wagtail pages. I don't know. And there's 0 pages, of course, because we have not created any documents yet. So overall, the Django admin backend is really nice to have because we don't have to create a view for managing our Django models. We see all the models out of the box, and we can either create new records for each model, or we can change existing records if it exists. For example, since I have created a superuser account, I see my account already in the list of the users, and I can either delete myself or create a new user within the Django admin backend. So this is really super useful. And since Django version 2, I see that they somehow made the whole interface more responsive. Probably they use much more JavaScript for fiddling with the dynamic forms, and it works really nicely. So that would be default Django admin page. So I think that will be it for today. In today's video, we have just gone through one of the most crucial steps in this journey. I finally solved the no module error, and I managed to migrate all the database objects to PostgreSQL database. On top of that, we also generated all static files, and we also took a glimpse at the Django admin backend. And I hope to look at the wagtail content management system dashboard in the next video. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe, write in the comment below what's your opinion on Django backend. And since today is the Christmas Eve, I wish you Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and see you in the next video.